guys, my name is Grace Taylor, and you are listening to episode 4 of the Trauma Dump podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Here at the Trauma Dump podcast, we seek to answer the question, what is mental health? How do I take care of my own, and how do I support others on their mental health journey? This episode, we will be talking about gender dysphoria in our series on LGBTQIA issues. I'm so happy that you're here, and I'd love to get to know you better. So please join our Discord server, where you can share anonymously your burdens, your trauma, the things that you're going through, and get support from other people. I think we have over 160 something people on there, which is crazy to me. Thank you so much for being on the Discord, if you are on the Discord. And hey, you'll also get some resources for each episode. So for this episode, over gender dysphoria, there will be a lot of resources in the LGBTQIA tab. I really hope that you enjoy this episode, and if you do, please share it with your friends and your favorite people. So, a little known fact, I've had the Trauma Dump podcast for over a year. I haven't been able to post because of some reasons that maybe I'll get into in the future. But hey, this podcast episode was recorded over a year ago, and we had a guest. Her name is Payton. If you'd like to share on the show, please message us in the podcast Discord under participants, and we'll match you to the right episode. Since this episode was pre-recorded over a year ago, there won't be very much visual of me if you're watching over there on YouTube. So if you would rather watch it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I understand. It helps us either way. Please leave a like and comment down below what episode we should be doing next pertaining to LGBTQIA issues. Also, if you hear jingle jangling in the background, those are my 2 cats. I've locked them out of this room, and now they are protesting rather heavily. But if they were in this room, it would be even worse. And the kitten is reaching about 3 months old, and so she really thinks that she can jump on everything and destroy everything. So it's better that she's not in the room. Now, I think you've noticed my fan, probably. I turned off the AC so that we can have better sound quality. And because I turned off the AC, it's pretty dang hot with all these lights. Also, this is the bi flag. I identify as a bisexual. I think I came out as a bisexual when I was 15 years old, and I got a lot of backlash from my family because I come from a very Christian family. So, yes. According to the NHS, which is the National Healthcare System in the UK, gender dysphoria is a sense of unease or dissatisfaction that a person may have because of the mismatch between their biological sex and their gender identity. Remember, I'm not a licensed health professional. This podcast only seeks to create community and further understanding of difficult topics. If you or a loved one feel like you have gender dysphoria, please reach out to a medical health professional, like a counselor, or go see a psychiatrist and get formally diagnosed so that you can get treatment. The topics discussed here are for a mature audience, so viewer discretion is always advised. Before we get into the interview section of this episode, I think it's important to define some key terms that are discussed in this episode. One of the key terms is cisgender, which describes a person whose gender identity aligns with, in a traditional sense, the sex that they were assigned at birth. Gender diverse. It's an umbrella term describing individuals with gender identities and/or expressions that vary from expected developmental norms. This includes people who identify as multiple genders or with no gender at all. Gender dysphoria. It is a concept designated in the DSM-5 as a clinically significant distress or impairment related to a strong desire to be of another gender. This may include the desire to change primary or secondary sex characteristics. Not all transgender or gender diverse people suffer from or experience gender dysphoria, but many do. It is usually a common occurrence between transgender people and people who also identify as a different sexuality. Gender expression, the outward manifestation of a person's gender, which may or may not reflect their inner gender identity based on traditional expectations. Gender expression incorporates how a person carries themselves, their dress, their accessories, grooming, voice and speech patterns, and conversational mannerisms, and also physical characteristics. Gender identity is a person's inner sense of being a girl, woman, boy, man, or some combination of both, or something else, including having no gender at all. This may or may not correspond to the gender assigned at birth. Non-binary is a term used by some individuals whose gender identity is neither girl nor boy. Traditional designation of a person's gender as female, male, or intersex based on the autonomy, which is external genitalia and or internal reproductive organs, and or biology, sex chromosomes, and hormones. Sex and gender are often used interchangeably, though they don't usually mean the same thing. They are distinct characteristics. It's best to distinguish between sex, gender, identity, and gender expression to avoid making assumptions about a person regarding one of these characteristics based on the knowledge of others. This is often abbreviated as AFAB, assigned female at birth, or AMAB, assigned male at birth. Sexual orientation describes types of individuals toward whom a person has emotional, physical, and or romantic attachments. Transgender is an umbrella term describing individuals whose gender identity does not align in a traditional sense with the gender they were assigned at birth. It may also be used to refer to a person whose gender identity is binary and not traditionally associated with that assigned at birth. Here's a disclaimer. As a bisexual person, I am not transgender. I have a very limited knowledge of transgender people, and that is why I did this podcast episode, so that I could become more informed. If you feel triggered by the whole ideation of being transgender or having different gender expressions, I would hope that you would watch this episode with an open mind and a kind, clear conscience. Just because you don't agree with how someone expresses themselves does not mean that it's wrong. I would also like to point out that many people express themselves in many different ways. And just because they express themselves in a certain way should not prevent you from expressing yourself in a certain way. I think too many people are really up in arms about transgender issues because they don't understand it. And I know there's a lot of far right people who don't believe in being transgender, and there's a lot of far left people that think many more people are transgender. I'm somewhere on the middle ground. My personal beliefs pertaining to the entire transgender issues will not be discussed in this episode to prevent anyone from being offended. I really don't want to offend anyone, but I also think it's crucial to talk about these topics so that we can become more informed, because a lot of people suffering from gender dysphoria experience significant trauma. And that is what this podcast is about becoming trauma informed and learning about all things trauma, because trauma is not who you are, it's what you go through. And many people experiencing gender dysphoria go through significant trauma that is pertaining to it. So that is why we will be discussing gender dysphoria in this episode.
And now it's time for the interview. Hey, Payton. Welcome to the Trauma Dump podcast. I'm so excited to have you as my first ever interview on this podcast. So before we start, you identify as she, they, right? Okay, cool. So for those in the comments, whenever you refer to Payton, please use she pronouns or she, they pronouns. All right, let's get into this.
If it's all right, I'd like to talk about the pathologization of trans identity,
Mm-hmm.
which mainly occurred in the counterculture of the '60s in this country specifically, because the DSM-5 is a product of the American Psychological Association. The research at the time was basically trying to make gender variance go away. So they needed a neat explanation. They needed to knock people into categories, and then they needed to make them invisible again. We could not have anomalies
Mm-hmm.
in the binary because it obstructed the the social understanding of how gender works. So a lot of like what informed gender dysphoria is some bunk ass science. Like if you look at the works of like Ray Blanchard, for example, autogynephilia and homosexual transsexuals is how he divided um, trans women that he studied.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and these categories are scientifically ridiculous and have been disproven by multiple different philosophers and psychiatric research, including a favorite paper of mine written by Julia Serrano, a great writer. I think the academic paper is called "The Case Against Autogynephilia." It's a great paper. So there's a lot of like medical history specifically, and the reason you don't see this like pathologization in other views of gender variance throughout time and history in different cultures, which have been more accepting of gender variance, is because of the medical nature of it. In America, the only way for a trans woman to get treatment, perceived social discrepancies, was to go to medical professionals. Help, there's something wrong with me. Help,
Mm-hmm.
I am broken. I am wrong. Fix me, please. So this society, like American society, shunted this responsibility on doctors. Whereas, like, if you look at like a Native American culture, I know many of them have two spirit, which is a very common thing for them, and like a third social gender. I know in ancient Judea there were seven. There were seven genders in of ancient Israel that have kind of been erased by time and the Christian Dark Ages. But we have archaeologically discovered that that's how they were. I think the DSM-5 is necessary for nothing else but insurance purposes.
Mm-hmm.
We need the meds. You need a reason to tell the insurance that this is a problem. The most forward doctors, that's what they say. The most progressive doctors, that's what they say. Gender dysphoria is a concept invented to give insurance companies a reason to cover it.
Okay, then let me ask you this. Do you think gender matters or do we put too much on gender?
Um, So, as a social construction, I believe we can derive utility from it. I think a lot of people feel empowered by it, and I think we need to be careful when we use it. Uh, Gender matters insofar as it provides like a feeling of belonging, but the only reason like to make categories is to exclude people.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to make sure that we're using it appropriately. I think in the grand scheme of things, society would be better if gender was abolished, but realistically, given our current present circumstances, that's not possible. So while we have to use gender, let's use it appropriately and responsibly.
All right, so when it comes to societal gender norms, how are they helpful and how can they be harmful?
Well, in my opinion, gender is expectations. Gender is norms. Well, I mean, sometimes even. You could argue, I think my favorite definition of woman is actually pretty circular, or it at least sounds circular, because it's a category that is only distinguished by self identification. You are a woman if you say you're one. Just because of how crazy people are and how variable their bodies can be, the way they interact with the world can be, you kind of just, if they are, if they say they are this, then that's what they are.
I think that's super interesting that you put that women are women because they say they are women. You know, that ties right into Exodus 3:14, where God tells Moses, I am that I am. We are who we say we are.
But something that I think is really important is there are roles that people want to take on. And it can be categorized as, everybody wants to categorize things, even when they don't want to categorize things in my brain, because
Okay.
Everyone wants a reason for either existing or a reason for they do what they do, and everyone wants a reason for why that person does what they do. And so with categorization, it can be harmful, but it can actually be helpful and affirming, in my opinion. So if I said, this is how I explain my existence, explain how I feel, I think it can help connection. Whereas sometimes it can have the exact opposite. If I said maybe to my uncle, I was like, hi, I am non-binary and I have a partner and we live together, he could be like, no, you're a girl, you have a boyfriend, and you live together. I think it's a bit of a struggle when we try to define ourselves, when we're in this bubble of just what is happening. I think definitions can give us kind of a footing in our mental state and also our emotional state, being like, okay, I am who I say I am, you know?
I take a lot more issue with faith in general, just because like a lot of it is patriarchal in nature. Like religious institution, even like Bible Christians read a book inherently rooted in patriarchy. I guarantee you, there's not a book of the Bible that does not portray women as servile or evil. So, I don't know. So basically, my approach to this is gender doesn't matter, but if we want to assign meaning to it, let it serve the most social utility possible.
So do you wish that more people were understanding or could try to be more understanding?
Understanding of gender identity? And
yeah.
well, okay. So right now we are going through the trans AIDS crisis. Right now is just like what gay people faced in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. The problem is, like, a lot of, like, now that gay cis people have received acceptance, and then, through activism, like, the history of activism, decade by decade, trans people have kind of been tossed aside, and they didn't get to ride the ladder up to equality that cis gay people did. So now, like, the conservative pundits, the terrible people that lie constantly and stoke the fires of the worst hatred imaginable, they can't focus on gay people anymore because gay people got the pass. They fought harder and society accepts them as normal now. Now it's time that trans people are in the spotlight, specifically trans women, because it's harder for us to pass and we're weirder. I'm gonna be honest, we're weirder. It's harder for people to understand male to female. So we have a higher rate of visibility. And that's just like how it's been throughout history. There is just this constant onslaught, one conducted by conservative politicians in the 1980s. Nothing they do has ever been new or inventive. They're just saying the same shit about a different group of people. Eventually, trans liberation will be finished. And obviously, that doesn't come without considerable concerns for actual equity, rather than, like, saying that we're equal. There's a lot that isn't done yet, but for now, trans people are treated like second-class citizens. And I wish that's what we were talking about more and more. More so than these, like semantic debates on whether or not I have the right to exist. If you want to be more understanding, then turn off Fox News.
So, speaking of Fox News, have you ever experience someone refusing to accept your gender identity?
Well, because I'm unhealthy and strange, I spend a lot of time online. So yes, all the time I've been met with people like this, especially when they hear me talk and they don't see my face. Um, because I'll level with you. I don't sound like a girl yet. I'm still working on it. So they hear my voice and then I'm like, no, I'm a woman. And then I'm met with like vitriol, and a lot of it comes from like a preconscious disgust and fear. They're not willing to engage usually, like point by point, explain their beliefs and decisions. Normally they're just like, you're gross. I learned that you're gross a long time ago, and that was reinforced by everyone around me. So you're gross, you're gross, you're gross.
I mean, I personally think that's so sad because, so sad and so frustrating because in my mind, everyone is really just lovely. I mean, put aside our actions, put aside our beliefs, we were all just made so beautiful. I mean, I look at you and I see like you're just a shining
Oh.
light of just beauty. And you may say things that I don't agree with. That doesn't mean that I treat you any less or I disrespect you in any way, shape, or form. Just because we disagree doesn't mean that we can't be friends, that we can't associate with one another. So when I hear or see someone being intentionally hateful or otherwise, it's so upsetting because it's so unnecessary.
Yeah, Grace is a sweetie. Grace read my aura the other day. It was Grace is a treasure.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's all I have to say on the matter.
So then my next question would be, is gender fluid? Do you consider gender to be fluid?
Gender is gender fluid. I think gender fluid people are real.
Yeah.
And I think gender can change for some people. I do not want to discredit the experience of people who at one point in their life felt gender dysphoria and then no longer feel it. I think gender can change definitely over time. I think your own concept of your own gender identity can change over time. So like right now, I feel like I fluctuate. Like if you wanted to get into like the Tumblr terms of it, I would be more of a demigirl than like an actual binary trans woman. But like functionally, I don't want to get into the weeds of it with everyone I meet. So I just say I'm a trans woman. It's easier for them to understand. So that's what I say. It's what we call in the trans community a professional she/her.
Okay, let's go.
So then what is your opinion on medical transitions, either through medicine or surgery or both?
I think insurance companies should cover them because sometimes they are medically necessary. Because gender dysphoria, it's as much as it is like contrived in my opinion. I do think it is real and it's painful. It is painful. There are days when I cannot look at myself in the mirror because I can't stand my own reflection. So I think they should be covered medically as medically necessary. A lot of them. I recently, especially as more acceptance has come, bottom surgery has become less and less common. And there's a lot of factors going into that. A lot of that is wait lists. In America, it is very hard to get bottom surgery. It's expensive. You have to wait forever, and the doctors aren't as skilled as they are as they are in other countries.
Yeah, as they should be. They're
So
not as skilled as
a lot
they
of
should
trans
be.
women have to travel to other countries like Thailand or I don't know, Japan. No, not Japan, but usually somewhere in Southeast
Sweden.
Asia. So it's like they have to practice medical tourism, which can be very dangerous.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So, and that's where like cheap surgery is. That's where they have to go because the American healthcare system is so fucked.
Oh, it is. Oh, definitely.
I will probably get some. I'm still making up my mind. I've been on hormones only a year, so I want to see what they do. I'm going to ride this out, get some mileage out of them, and then we're going to... Because, like, the thing they always tell you with hormones discretionarily is, like, your mileage may vary. It depends on how young you are when you start, your genetic predispositions, what genes you have on your mother's side. That's what produces results. So we're going to see how I feel after a few years, and then I'm going to start thinking about surgeries.
So what are your thoughts on those who detransition? Because I don't even know who this person is, but this woman, she calls herself a woman now. She transitioned to be a man.
Mm-hmm.
She was a man for about 5 years, and then she detransitioned, and she tries to be, I guess, an activist against those who transition. I don't remember her name. I can't recall, but she has black hair. And when I see it, I become somewhat frustrated because her experience is like...
I have a meme for this.
Oh, send it to the Discord, and then we'll put that as the meme of the week.
Okay.
But I see this and I get somewhat frustrated because I think, yes, spread your truth, spread your story, but it can be so harmful to those who are still in the deciding phase of what they want to do or how they feel about their autonomy. And, you know, and as well as their anatomy. It's such a broad characterization of saying, oh, I transitioned and it was just the worst, so I'm detransitioning. And I don't know, the way that she says it is, it puts a bad taste in my mouth.
Okay,
you know?
so detransitioning is a complex topic. Most people detransition for social reasons. They came out, they were socially ostracized. That is the story with the majority of them. Mm-hmm. They were unhappy with their results, they didn't pass, so they went back into hiding. It's very common. And many people who detransition, retransition. That is the most common story. However, you do have those people who, like, basically straight up have, like, their story is they've made a mistake and they want to go back. Mm-hmm. Totally fair. So I'm going to present you with an ethical dilemma.
Okay, I'm ready.
The trans healthcare trolley problem.
Right.
An unknown number of trans people have been tied to one of the train tracks while a runaway trolley is set to roll down an empty track, saving the trans people. Right. However, that guy over there might voluntarily walk onto the train track. Do you pull the lever, sacrificing the trans people to protect that one guy from possibly making a mistake?
Oh, Jesus.
So, do you doom countless millions to medical gatekeeping and second-class citizenship because one person made a mistake?
Definitely not.
So,
definitely not.
That's the trans healthcare trolley problem.
Oh, Jesus.
Of course, like, you have to be compassionate towards detransitioners. But you can't let it compromise the healthcare of people who need it. Sorry.
The whole right-wing conservative side is doing an active campaign against trans people. They have been for a long time, but it's getting worse.
Yes, they're escalating.
They're escalating very quickly. And with all these school shootings, I mean, there was the school shooting in Uvalde, and then there was another school shooting in Texas where the gunman got killed before he could kill anybody else, like a week later. And so they're not even focusing on anything like that. They're focusing on criminalizing abortions, criminalizing birth control, and criminalizing trans people, especially in Alabama, where it's basically illegal to get any medical needs for being a trans person. So my question is, many right-wing politicians wish to and actively are taking away trans rights, or frankly, human rights. And what are your thoughts on this?
So, conservative ideology, its endgame is always fascism. The second progress stops and we take our foot off the gas pedal, they are going to keep making up culture war issues. They're going to expand the front of the culture war. They're going to make a ton of shit up and pass bills that make no sense. For instance, like, Don't Say Gay. That was a huge sweep across state legislatures. And it wasn't even, like, the literature they were banning wasn't that bad. And now, how things are now, an openly gay teacher cannot disclose their sexuality. The fact that they have a partner. So, like, let's say you had like a kindergarten teacher who happened to be a lesbian. She could not mention her partner. That would be against the fucking law. And if you look directly, like specifically at trans people right now, the end game of the conservative movement is for trans people to not exist. They want us to stop existing. They will not be happy until we no longer exist. So they're gearing up for genocide. This is where this is going. This is where this thought process leads. Either you accept that we exist and that we deserve rights, or you accept that we shouldn't exist, we're subhuman, and we deserve to be exterminated. So those are the two positions. They don't say that. They operate in abstraction. So that is what conservative movements are doing right now. They're saying, we want to keep them away from our children. We want to make it harder for them to mutilate their bodies. Denying access to healthcare to trans people it kills us. It will kill you. You are killing people when you do this. You are killing kids. You are killing adults. That's what it does. Mm-hmm. Texas, the state of Texas, is prosecuting parents for providing adequate care to their children.
The medical field defines gender dysphoria as a mental illness. Is this helpful or is this harmful? Do you think this is harmful to people to think of gender dysphoria as a mental illness?
It's not. Medical professionals will tell you it isn't a mental illness. It used to have in the DSM-4 an attachment that classified it as a disorder. It was like gender dysphoria disorder, so like GDD. Now it has dropped that last D in an ongoing process by psychiatrists to depathologize trans identity. It's not really a mental illness anymore.
Let's go.
Which is it's not all bad news around here. Academia is on our side. Medical literature supports trans affirmation. Medical literature supports liberation.
So let me ask you this. Have you experienced gender dysphoria?
Yes, I have. I actually have something a little more scary. I have body dysmorphia. So, and that's something that cis women have too. I promise.
Oh yeah, you can ask Joey. I loathe having breasts. I loathe it entirely. It is painful. It is the most painful thing ever. I constantly have to roll my shoulders back, try to adjust the way that I'm sitting because I'm uneven. And it is kind of my own fault, but kind of not. And my whole life,
never blame yourself for the shape of your body, please. Oh my god.
Oh my goodness. But all I've wanted since I can recall having boobs is to have a breast reduction. That's all I've wanted, because, or at least for them to be even, because I feel like that would be so much better. I look in the mirror and I'm like, this one, she hanging low, she's swinging low, sweet chariot, and I don't want her to. I want them to be even, and it's just, body dysmorphia is the worst, and it can be a killer as well.
Yeah, it is a big fuel for substance abuse, eating disorders. It's a big problem. So the dysphoria I usually faced, at least in the beginning, was body hair, because I'm an Italian, so I was hairy. I have a distinct memory actually at the very beginning of my transition. I went into a private restroom in the dorm I was living in. Mm-hmm. I looked at myself, and then I was overcome with this impulse to shave every fucking hair off of my body.
Bro.
So I spent 30 minutes with an electric razor, and I got everything. And then I brought a vacuum into the bathroom.
Oh my god.
Because that's how much fucking hair there was. And then my first gender affirming treatment that I sought was laser hair removal.
Yeah.
I'm getting certain parts of my body lasered, which will over time result in permanent hair loss. I'm getting parts of my legs, my underarms, and my face and neck. So now I don't have to shave my face but once a week. It's pretty nice.
Sounds nice.
And I don't really have a beard shadow with that. that was a problem in the beginning. That
Yeah.
was terrible. But I don't have that problem anymore. It was nice. But dysphoria is an ongoing thing. And and I have some good days and I have some bad days.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like this. It feels like there is this general distress at all times, this worry that no one will recognize who I am when I leave the house. And it can manifest in like seeking external validation from others. It's some days are good, some days are bad. Some days I feel like I look awesome, sexy, beautiful, amazing, and then some days I feel like a monster. Not worthy of acknowledgement. It's, it's whatever. It's dysphoria.
It is dysphoria. I mean, dysphoria isn't just with trans people, it's with everyone. Everyone can experience dysphoria.
The word dysphoria just categorizes a general distress. Gender dysphoria, a better word for it is like gender depression.
Oh yeah, I feel that. So, how has beginning your transition journey affected your relationships with your friends and family?
Well, you've been party to some of that, Grace.
I have.
So, I was not given the benefit of a stealth transition like many girls have. I was not able to like take hormones in secret for years and then surprise. No, I didn't get that. I had a pretty obnoxious therapist who was egging me on, telling me to come out to everyone I knew and real life test, which is an abusive way to treat a trans patient.
That's uncalled for on
so-
many levels.
So I was pre-medicine, living full-time as a woman, and it was terrible. That was a really rough summer. But eventually I got medicated.
If you mind, what medicines do you take for your transition?
Well, I take some pretty common ones. I'm on estradiol. I do pills, estradiol, spironolactone, and progesterone.
I'm on progesterone.
Yeah, it's the medicine I take. Cis women with menopause take.
I know.
So, and spironolactone, that is both like anti-balding medicine and medicine that helps you pee more. So,
Let's go.
aside from urinating, like I've had 3 cups of coffee every day, I have experienced 0 side effects, 0 blood clots. As long as I'm not like a chain smoker, hormones are safe.
Let's go. Yeah, and actually a lot of birth control, there's progesterone and estrogen. It's like a mixture.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Super common.
It's super common. It's a bit frustrating for me, especially when people who talk about you misgender you. And
Yeah, in the family it's pretty common.
yeah.
Mostly because it's new. It's been a year, and some parts of the family don't even know yet. But I don't know. At this point, really, I just don't care. The people in my family who are important to me, they know, and they support me. And everyone else, if you're on board, great. If you're not, I couldn't give less of a fuck.
Yeah, it doesn't need to
I
affect you.
I just don't care. But as far as my family's concerned, the people who matter support me, and I have a great support network, and I am so fucking lucky.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I'm so happy for you.
Yes, that is not the case with all trans women or all trans people. It's rough out there.
It is
So I lucked the fuck out.
According to psychiatry.org, trans people suffer from high levels of stigmatization, discrimination, and victimization, which contribute to a negative self-image and increased rates of other mental disorders. I think it's like 1 in 10 transgender individuals are at a higher risk of victimization and hate crimes than the general public. Suicide rates among transgender people are markedly higher than the general population. So when we hear that trans people are committing suicide, it's not just because of this stigmatization. It's like people enact hate crimes against these people, and it isn't just you get hate crimed and you die, which does happen. It's the onslaught of just you don't matter, you shouldn't exist, like get out of here.
So something to consider here is that a lot of the transgender people who face the hate crimes, the more serious hate crimes, they're not me. I'm white. They're black trans women. Mm-hmm. That's who is getting hate crimed, because they don't have access to resources like I do. They don't have the support network and the family income that I do. And they don't have like protections of the law that I do. Literally everyone is against them. It is rough. As far as my mental health issues are concerned, like every other trans person, does a cute little quirky thing called digital self-harm. It's where you watch videos of people being transphobic, or you see media about people being transphobic, like, oh, the Dave Chappelle special, every time Ricky Gervais opens his fucking mouth. Like, it's like all of this in popular culture, because transgender people are the zeitgeist right now. So that is, it's just a great way to, like, ruin your day all the time. So I have definitely experienced mental health issues. I think, I don't think my gender dysphoria and, like, my anxiety or my struggles with depression are linked. I would argue that they like to hang out. Like, my gender dysphoria and my anxiety are fuck buddies.
Oh,
but
my God.
They never lock it down. So they hang out sometimes, but not all the time.
Yeah.
That's how I would put it. It's because they are very distinct.
Mm-hmm. So, what would be your message to others going through a gender transition of their own?
There is no right way to do it. You may make a plan. Great. You don't want to do some of the things I did. Great. A lot of girls online will put a lot of emphasis on voice training, especially if they spend a lot of time online. I haven't, because I find it frustrating.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to produce results quickly, and the visual, physical aspects have been more important to me, so I prioritize them rather than voice training. But really, like, if you're going through a medical transition, do it at your own pace, do what's comfortable, and do what your body is telling you to. Because a lot of these, like, impulses that we feel are... First, you feel them beyond cognition. They are primal. I had a primal need to be feminine. And that I understand, like, that was, like, partially, like, my resistance to masculinity, and partially, like, my attraction to femininity. It was like precognitive. I felt it was an impulse. Mm-hmm. Like, in my lizard brain, I was like, it's time to be a woman now. So, further, medical transition not required.
Yeah.
Be who you want.
Be who you are for your pride.
Prioritize your safety also.
Oh, yeah.
If you are coming out to somebody, make sure it's in a safe place. Don't come out to somebody you don't feel safe around. Also,
Public
maybe
places.
don't hang out with people you don't feel safe around.
Don't do it. You'll regret it in the future, or people will regret it that you did it.
Yeah, especially, like, if you're depending financially on somebody who may not react well to you coming after them, maybe save that convo so you don't get thrown out on your ass. Transition in secret. Get out as soon as you can.
Mm-hmm.
That's my advice. Prioritize your safety and your own happiness above everything. If you are going through a gender transition of your own, like I have a partner, a long-term partner. There have been moments where I've been like, I can't give you my all right now because I am metamorphosizing, and this takes a lot of fucking emotional energy. So I can't give you all of it right now. So take that for yourself. You deserve it. The end. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Next question.
So, what do you think of the saying, I transmute my pain into purpose?
It resonates with me, I think. Yeah, I like it. It kind of reminds me of the times when, like, I seethe and mulled over non-binary influencers who don't have to worry about passing. Makes me mad, because I feel like they don't have the pain I do of being transgender. But really, that is me projecting my suffering onto others. So if I can transmute my pain into purpose, that would be cool, instead of like seething online about strangers.
Yeah. It's really hard to have such an internal struggle and see other people, or you perceive other people to not have that same like internal struggle.
I'm sure they are, though. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure they have a lot they're dealing with. Because there's so much that comes with their identities that is painful and terrible.
Mm-hmm. So this podcast's purpose is to identify trauma and how we can help heal ourselves and others. Just a reminder for those of you out there, trauma is not who you are. It's what you went through. And with that being said, patients, have you endured trauma?
Yes.
What types of trauma have you endured?
Well, like 50% of trans people, I have experienced sexual abuse, sexual assault, regular assault.
Mm-hmm.
I've been bullied in my life. My parents got divorced, and that kind of sucked. It affected what I went through it with them. That was rough. But that's about the extent of it.
Mm-hmm. And that is a type of trauma. What this podcast seeks to help understand is that trauma isn't just fighting in a war. It isn't just seeing someone get shot. Trauma can be a whole lot of different types of things. I mean, childhood trauma is a real thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a real thing. And in the culture that I grew up in, and that I would say Jamaican culture, is that if you show pain, that's weakness. I don't know if that's necessarily very Jamaican, but in general. But I grew up in a Jamaican household where if I was crying about something, they would call me dramatic and tell me to get over it and move on and don't worry. And at the same time, yes, like that has its own place, but it creates this kind of stigma that your feelings don't matter. And this podcast seeks to say your feelings, your opinions, your experiences matter, and they're what created you. And to work through those experiences will help you in the future and help your inner child.
Yeah, I think no matter who your parents were, they fucked you up.
Oh, yeah.
In so many ways, I promise. Even if you don't think about it that much, your parents fucked you up. Everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So whether they got divorced, whether they stayed together, it's always worth everybody's time to spend a little time in therapy and maybe think about the things that they should unlearn that their parents taught them.
Mm-hmm. So that being said, unlearning something, what would you tell your inner child or the past you about the present you?
Oh, God. Well, a lot of times I struggle with, like, my anxiety struggles. It's almost like I'm presented with, like, a golden opportunity for happiness, right? And right now, I should be happy. Like, I have a lot going for me. And I just get in my own way all the time, worrying about what I'm not, or what I haven't accomplished yet. So, what I'd tell my inner child or past me about present me, I would say that, like, chill the fuck out, dude. And stay away from Ben Shapiro. Those videos aren't gonna make you a better person. Because we all get sucked in a little bit.
Yeah.
That was me. That was me for a few years.
I think it's really important to heal our inner child and reparent ourselves, because no matter how great your parents were, they are human. We are all human. We all do things that, whether we're conscious of it or not, negatively impact or affect another person as well as ourselves. And so, reparenting yourself and saying, Mimi and Papa would say all the time, consider the source. If the source is not someone who loves you, who wants the best for you, then again, their opinions don't matter, but you are the source for yourself. And so if you're saying all these negative things about yourself, it's hurting not just you, but your outlook on your whole life. And part of healing is recognizing that not everything that happened to you is your fault. Most of what happened to you is not your fault. And retaking that pain and saying, you know what, I'm going to do something with this and I'm going to heal myself. And I think when you start to heal yourself, you'll see other people and you'll want to reach out and help them. That is my honest to God opinion. If you are a healed person or a person within the healing process, and if you see someone else struggling, you will want to help them. So that is kind of what this podcast is about. It's about helping ourselves, first, because you have to put on your mask first. I don't care if it's a fucking baby next to you.
Yeah.
Help yourself first. And then, and only then, can you help someone else.
Today's meme of the week is right here. Oh, such a good meme, don't you think? I love memes, especially memes that make light of trauma, because sometimes that's what we need to do, is to make light of our experiences so it's easier to deal with. A quick reminder before we part. This podcast seeks to forge a strong community, so please don't hesitate to join our Discord for podcast updates and to connect with others. In the Discord, we have so many different channels of discussion with various topics that include way more than trauma. This podcast seeks to create a place where you can be heard. So please join us. You are needed, appreciated, and I'd love to meet you, know you, and support you. Remember, you are capable of a fulfilling life despite your circumstances and your trauma. May you rise from the ashes and be filled with peace, love, understanding, and above all else, compassion for others. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next episode. But before we go, let's spin the wheel. Ooh, it landed on guilty. Oh my goodness. Or remorseful and ashamed. So, a lot of times when we're dealing with significant issues pertaining to trauma or pertaining to expressing how we feel on the inside, bringing it out into the world, sometimes we can feel guilty. Gigi agrees. Gigi. Sometimes we can feel guilty, right, Gigi? She says yes. And the reason why we feel guilty sometimes is because we experience significant shame. A lot of us have experienced shame in our lives when expressing how we truly feel, because some people don't want to deal with it. My advice to those experiencing guilt or shame and not wanting to when it pertains to trauma is find a better audience to discuss your trauma with. If people are making you feel guilty for talking about things that you're going on with in your life or things that are happening to you, that's not the right people that you should be involving in your life. That being said, it's very hard sometimes to find the right people, the people that you feel safe with, your chosen family, but they are out there. I want you to not stop trying. And especially if you feel guilt or shame around your trauma, another way to help yourself is to reaffirm yourself. An affirmation that you can say is, I am not responsible for how people treat me, and I will not take upon their judgment and guilt or shame within myself. I will love myself and cherish myself because that's what I deserve. If you would like to support the show and help us keep this podcast running, we have a Patreon. The link is in the description. So please, if you would like to donate, please do. Also, if you donate to our podcast through our Patreon, you can get bracelets. I made these myself. I worked very hard on them. They're usually all made with natural stones. So we got some tiger's eye, we have some rose quartz, we have some amazonite. If you would like to donate to our podcast, you can get a bracelet every month. And also, I have so much more. So, donate, please. Support the podcast. Yay! Thank you so much for watching the episode. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!